Files. In order to make the text you edit permanent, you must put it in a file. Otherwise, it will go away when you exit Emacs. In order to put your text in a file, you must find the file before you enter the text. This is also called visiting the file. Finding a file means that you will see the contents of the file within Emacs. In many ways, it is as you were editing the file itself. However, the changes you make using Emacs do not become permanent until you save the file. This is so you can avoid leaving a half changed file on the system when you don't want to. Even when you save, Emacs leaves the original file under a changed name in case you later decide that your changes were a mistake. If you look near the bottom of the screen, you will see a line that begins with dashes, that starts with dash colon 3 dashes tutorial or something like that. This part of the screen normally shows the name of the file that you are visiting. Right now you are visiting your personal copy of Emacs tutorial, which is called tutorial. When you find a file in Emacs, that file's name will appear in that precise spot. One special thing about the command for finding a file is that you have to say what file name you want. When we say the command reads an argument, in this case, the argument is the name of the file. After you type the command Control X, Control F, find a file, Emacs asks you to type the file name. The file name you type appears on the bottom of the screen. The bottom line is called the mini buffer when it is used for this sort of input. You can use ordinarily Emacs editing commands to edit the file name. While you are while you are entering the file name or any mini buffer input, you can cancel the command using Ctrl G. Type Ctrl X, Ctrl F, then type Ctrl G. This cancels the mini buffer and also cancels the Ctrl F, uh, Ctrl X, Ctrl F command that was using the mini buffer, so you don't find any file. So Ctrl X, Ctrl F, Ctrl G. Good. When you have finished entering the file name, type return to terminate it. Um, the mini buffer appears and then Ctrl X, Ctrl F command goes to work to find the file you choose. The file contents now appear on screen and you can edit the contents. When you finish, when you wish to make your changes permanent, type the command Ctrl X, Ctrl S, save the file. This copies the text within Emacs into the file. The first time you do this, Emacs renames the original file to a new name so that it's not lost. The new name is made with adding a tilde to the end of the original file's name. When saving is finished, Emacs displays the name of the file returned. Type Ctrl X, Ctrl S tutorial return. This should save this tutorial to a file named tutorial and show row tutorial at the bottom of the screen. Ctrl S. I have a disable legal mode. So Ctrl X, Ctrl S tutorial. Not on this one. You can find an existing file to view it or edit it. You can also find a file which does not already exist. This is the way to create a file with Emacs. Find the file which starts out empty and then begin inserting the text for the file. When you ask to save the file, Emacs actually creates the file with the text that you have inserted. From now, from now on, you can consider yourself to be editing an already existing file. Buffers. If you find a second file with Control X, Control F, the first file remains inside Emacs. You can switch back to it by finding it again with Control X, Control F. This way you can get quite a number of files inside Emacs. Emacs stores each file's text inside an object called a buffer. Finding a file makes a new buffer inside Emacs. To see a list of the buffers that currently exist, type Ctrl XB list buffers. Try Ctrl XB now. Ctrl X, Ctrl B. See how each buffer has a name, and it may also have a file name for the file whose content it holds. Any text you see in an Emacs window is always part of some buffer. Type Ctrl X1 to get rid of the buffer list. Ctrl XB, Ctrl X1. Okay. When you have several buffers, only one of them is correct at any time. That buffer is the one you edit. If you want to edit another buffer, you need to switch to it. If you want to switch to a buffer that corresponds to a file, you can do it by visiting the file again with Ctrl X, Ctrl F. But there is an easier way. Use Ctrl XB command. In that command, you have to type the buffer's name. Create a file named foo by typing Ctrl X F foo return. Then type Ctrl XB tutorial return to come back to this tutorial. So Control X, Control F, foo, Control XB, tutorial. Okay. Most of the time, the buffer's name is the same as the file name without the file directory part. However, this is not always true. The buffer list you make with Control XB shows you both the buffer name and the file name of every buffer. Some buffers do not correspond to files. The buffer named buffer list, which contains buffer list that you made with Control XB, does not have any file. This tutorial buffer initially did not have a file, but now it does because in the previous section you typed Control X S and saved it to a file. The buffer named messages also does not correspond to any file. This buffer contains the messages that have appeared on the bottom line during your Emacs session. Type Ctrl XB messages return to look at the buffer of messages, then Ctrl XB tutorial to come back to this tutorial. Ctrl XB messages, Ctrl XB tutorial. Okay. If you make changes to the text of one file, then find another file. This does not save the first file. It changes remain inside Emacs in that file's buffer. The creation or editing of the second file buffer has no effect on the first file's buffer. This is very useful, but also it means that you need a convenient way to save the first file's buffer. Having to switch back to that buffer in order to save with control X control S would be a nuisance. So we have control XS. Save some buffers to their files. Control XS asks you about fi each file visiting buffer which contains changes that you have not saved. It asks you for each such buffer whether to save the buffer to its file. Insert a line of text, then type Ctrl XS. It should ask you whether to save the buffer name tutorial. Answer yes to the question by typing Y. Ctrl XS Y. Extending the command set. There are many more Emacs commands that could possibly be put on all the control and meta characters. Emacs gets around with this the extend command. It comes in two flavors: Control X character extend followed by one character, meta X named command extend followed by long name. These are commands that are generally useful but are used less than the commands that you have already learned about. You have already seen a few of them. The file commands Control X, Control F to find and Control X, Control S to save. For example, another example is the command to end the Emacs session. This is the command Control XC. Do not worry about losing the changes you made. Control XC offers to save each changed file before it kills Emacs. If you are using a graphical display, you don't need any special command to move from Emacs to another application. You can do this with the mouse or with window manager commands. However, if you are using a text terminal which can only show one application at a time, you need to suspend Emacs to move to any other application. Control Z is the command to exit Emacs temporarily, so you can go back to the same Emacs session afterwards. When Emacs is running on text terminal, Control Z suspends Emacs. That is, it returns to the shell but does not destroy the Emacs job. In the most common shells, you can resume Emacs with the fg command or with %Emacs. The time to use Control X, Control C is when you are about to log out. It is also the right thing to use to exit an Emacs invoked for a quick edit, such as mail handling utility. There are many Control X commands. Here's the list of the ones you have learned. Control X, Control F find file, Control X, Control S save buffer to file, Control X S save some buffers to their files, Control X, Control B list buffers, Control X P switch buffers, Control X, Control C quit Emacs, Control X1 delete all but one window, Control XU undo. Named extend commands are commands which are used even less frequently or commands which are used only in certain modes. An example is the command replace string, which replaces one string with another in the buffer. When you type meta x, Emacs prompts you at the bottom of the screen with meta x, and you should type the name of the command, in this case replace string. Just type replace tab and Emacs will complete the name. Replace tab. Okay, replace tab. Okay. Tab is the tab key usually found above the caps lock or shift key near the left edge of the keyboard. Submit the command name with return. The replace string command requires two arguments: the string to be replaced and the string to replace it with. You must end each argument with return. Move cursor to the blank line, two lines below this one, then type meta-x replace return changed return alter the meta-x space s space s return string change. Notice how this line has altered. You have replaced the word altered with altered whenever it occurred after the initial position of the cursor. Autosave. When you have made changes in the file but you have not saved them yet, they could be lost if your computer crashes. To protect you from this, Emacs periodically writes to an autosave file for each file that you are editing. The autosave file name has a hash at the beginning and the end. For example, if your file is named hello.c, it autosave file's name is hash hello.c hash. When you save the file in in the normal way, Emacs deletes its autosave file. Okay, I just need to check this again. Meta-x replace space s space okay space auto completes in mini buffer. Meta-x tab also auto completes in mini buffer. If the computer crashes, you can recover the save editing by finding the file normally, the file you are editing, not into the autosave file, and then typing meta-x recover this file return. When it asks for confirmation, type s return to go ahead and recover the autosave data. Echo area. If Emacs sees that you are typing multi-character commands slowly, it shows them to you at the bottom of the screen in an area called echo area. The echo area contains the bottom line of the screen, mode line. The line immediately above the echo area is called as the mode line. The mode line says something like hyphen colon star star tutorial 63% L 749 fundamental. This line gives useful information about the status of Emacs and the text you are editing. You already know what the file name means and the file you have found. The NN percentage indicates your current position in the buffer text, and it means that NN% of the buffer is above the top of the screen. If the top of the buffer is on the screen, it will say top instead of 0%. If the bottom of the buffer is on the screen, it will say bot. If you're looking at the buffer so small that all of it fits on the screen, the mode says all. The L and the digits indicate the position in another way. They give the current line number at point. The stars near the front mean that you have made changes to the text. Right after you visit or save a file, that part of the mode line shows no stars, just dashes. The part of the mode line inside the parenthesis is to tell you what editing modes you are in. The default mode is fundamental, which is what you are using now. This is an example of a major mode. Emacs has many different major modes. Some of them are meant for editing different languages and or kinds of text such as Lisp mode, text mode, etc. At any time, only one major mode is active, and its name can always be found in the mode line just where fundamental is now. Each major mode asks for a few commands behave makes a few commands behave differently. For example, there are commands for creating commands in a program, and since each programming language has a different idea of what a command should look like, each major mode has to set commands differently. Each major mode is the name of the extended command, which is how you can switch to that. For example, MetaX fundamental mode is a command to switch to fundamental mode. If you are going to be editing human language text such as this file, you should probably use text mode. Type MetaX text mode. Okay, text mode. Don't worry, none of this is text mode. Okay. Don't worry, none of the Emacs commands you have learned changes in any great way. We can observe that meta f, meta b now treat apostrophes as part of words. Previously in fundamental mode, meta f, meta b treats apostrophes as word separators. Major modes usually take subtle changes like that one. Most commands do the same job in each major mode, but they work a little bit differently. To view documentation on your current major mode, type Ctrl HM. Move Control move the cursor to the line following this line. Okay. Control LL to bring this line to the top of the screen. Control HM to see how text mode differs from fundamental mode. This mode paragraphs are delimited only by blank or white lines. You can thus get the full benefit of adaptive filling. Okay. Control X1. Major modes are called major because there are also minor modes. Minor modes are not alternative to major modes, just uh, minor modifications of them. Each minor mode can be turned on or off by itself, independent of all other minor modes and independent of your major mode. So you can use no minor modes or one minor mode or any combination of several minor modes. One minor mode which is very useful especially for editing human language text is autofill mode. When this mode is on, Emacs breaks the line in between words automatically when you insert text and make a line that is too wide. You can turn on autofill mode by doing meta-x autofill mode return. When the mode is on, you can turn it off by doing meta-x autofill mode return. If the mode is off, this command turns it on. If the mode is on, this command turns it off. We say that the command toggles the mode. Type meta-x autofill mode now. Then insert a line of ASDF um, over and over again uh, until you see it divide into two lines. You must put in spaces between them because autofill breaks lines only at spaces. Okay, meta-x autofill mode return. Okay, I'll copy this. W can breaks it here. The margin is usually set at 70 characters, but you can change it with Ctrl X F. You should give the margin setting you want as a numeric argument. Type Ctrl X F with an argument 20, Ctrl U 20, Ctrl F. Type in some text and see Emacs fill lines of 20 characters with it. Then back set back to 70 using Ctrl X F again. Okay, so Control U 20, Control X F. Okay, Steam. Okay, breaking. So Control X, so Control U 20, Control X F, Control X, Control U 70, Control X F. Now it is 70. Typing again. Okay, 70 to breaking. If you make changes in the middle of the paragraph, autofill mode does not refill it for you. To refill the paragraph, type meta q with a cursor inside that paragraph. Use paragraph and type meta q. Meta q. Searching. Okay, I'm going to stop right now. Continue this tomorrow.